knowing that we have this interview. Last night when I went to bed, I don't know how, but that's what I was thinking about. My child, what am I going to tell you? So it's a lot of things that really come back, memories. When I talk about it, it's good to give it up. My name is Robert. I was born in Budapest, Hungary in 1938, about a year before the Second World War started. And Hungary was a very right-wing country. My grandparents lived in a very small little village. Offhand, I don't remember the name, but that's where they actually came from. But when my aunts and my mother was in their 20s, I understand, they moved up to Budapest. And they all got married in Budapest. My mother was the last one, actually, in 1946, when she got married. She wasn't a youngster. She was 25 years old. But, yeah, that's about it. And my father was just the same. And my mother's sisters, she had 9 brothers and sisters. Only 4 of them survived after the war. But all the men, all the children, everybody else died. This is my oldest aunt, not the oldest, one of the oldest, my mother's sister, who had these 2 boys, and the Germans came in 1943. They shot them from the house, both of them. This is Erdog, the one who had the 2 kids. See, the one who was sitting there next to my mom. This is the youngest aunt, Margaret. Her story is she wound up in Auschwitz under Dr. Mengele. She was pregnant, and of course she lost the kid because of Mengele. I happened to be the only male child in the family who survived, which was a miracle according to the stories that my mother and my aunts were telling me about my father. During the war in 1943, I think when the Germans took everybody out of our houses, marched us into some kind of cement factory. It's not that I remember all that. Part of it I remember, but most of it is what they were telling me. Since I was 4 or 5 years old. But they marched us into a cement factory and separated all the older people. My 2 of my aunts wind up in Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen. But my mother, since she didn't look too good after she had an operation, I understand a few weeks before this happened, but she still looked, old enough. So they put us into a ghetto. And that's how she survived with me and my grandmother. I don't have much memory exactly, how it was, but they were telling me, that the ghetto was terrible. I remember that. There are some memories I have as 5 or 6 years old. That's, it was a terrible situation. There's a lot of people in the ghetto, and we were thrown into one place. We didn't have much food. There was some anecdotal story that my aunt was telling me that when we were very hungry, and my mom got the courage to go outside of the ghetto with some fold papers and brought back some meat, and it turned out to be that she, there was a dead horse on the street, and she got that. You know, we were talking about how to read. Now, after 1945, when the Soviets came in, you know, of course, we lost everything. And when the ghetto was opened, they said, let's go home. We tried to go home, unfortunately, where we lived, my mother's apartment, my father's apartment, somehow they're not fascist, Nazi stupid, and they didn't want to give it back. So he had to, my grandmother, her apartment was not taken because she lived on a higher floor, no elevators. So we went to live with her. And unfortunately, I mean, this is now I'm 7, 8 years old. She passed away, I think, 1940. I'm not 48 or 49. But I know that my mother always had a problem because I grew up, most of my childhood was spent next door to my mother's friend, who was actually a grandmother, because her son, they had one son, survived the war. The father died. But he survived the war anyway. He married a Jewish girl. And they had 2 kids, two girls, Judy and Veronica. And they were born in the 52, 54. And by that time I was like 10, 11 years old. So I a lot of times babysit them, you know, when they were born. Later on, when I started going back, we got together and become like sisters and brothers. So those are my 2 greatest family that I have left to me. She went to work for an orphanage, which was very close, but she was cooking for I don't know how many kids who were in that place. Sometimes I went there. She took me there and stayed with the other kids during the day. But one day in 1948, a man came over to see my mother. And, you know, I guess my father and his brothers very similar look alike. But me as a kid, I only remember him. The last time I saw him was when I was 4. So my resemblance is really from pictures. So when this man came in to see my mother in 1948, I was telling my mom, "This is Daddy, right? This is my father." And of course she said, "No, this is your uncle." That was in 1948. But you know, my first year of school, she tried to put me, because in 1946, when the war was over, the Jewish and the Catholic schools were still open. So my first year actually started in an elementary school. It was a Jewish school. But when the communists came and took over Hungary, 48, I think, they closed everything down. That's why I don't have any recollection of learning Judaism. The only thing is, my mother really just wanted me to grow up, wanted me to be around. She was very protective, obviously. She didn't want to get married because in those days, after the war, a lot of the Armenian soldiers were coming back from, you know, concentration camp or the Russian front where they were captured. That's how my uncle, Russian. But she didn't want to get married because she was waiting for years, thinking that maybe my father's still alive. So she never got married. And I was fatherless, but my mother really tried to do the best she could. When I came here, I didn't speak any English. I was an 18-year-old nerd. And the way I came here was because in 1956 they had the uprising. And that's how I could get out of Hungary with a couple of my friends who were actually holding my hand. I didn't know what to do. My mother stayed, but she did let me come and go, not knowing what's going to happen. And anyway, I wind up here. We had no way of getting in touch with my mother. That was in 57. The Russians still were there, and Soviets were still there. And they called us traitors since we left Hungary the way we did under that uprising couple of days. So they didn't allow us to do anything with traitors. So there was very, very little contact that I could have. My mother had started writing letters, and took a long time, but at least she knew I was okay. I didn't have a profession. I started working in any kind of jobs, especially in restaurant, a dishwasher, because I didn't have the language or how to get along for a better job. And once I started learning a little bit, then I went to work for a large department store, which unfortunately doesn't exist a long time, the Altman. That was the first. I had to take a test to see if they hire me, and unfortunately my English was good still, but my mathematics was good. They had a mathematics score, and it looks like I came out the first of the other people. So they hired me as a cashier, and that's how I started working. And when the Russians left, it becomes sort of like a democracy after the 60s, early 60s. They allowed telephone calls. So but she didn't have a phone. She had to go to the post office. But anyway, we got in touch. She was very happy to know I was okay, and I was with my uncle. Well, at the beginning, I was already finally talked to her in the 60s. I already had my little furnished room, sort of. So I was working, I made money, and as soon as I could, I got out of my uncle's apartment. But that was very simple. In 1962, I was working in the Altman, and I was coming home. And on the subway, when I was coming out of the subway, he was going in. Or vice versa, I don't want to lie. I was coming out and he was coming in. But anyway, we met on the steps, just, how people cruise each other. I mean, I don't know how else to say. We looked at each other and I guess we liked it. So I was very shy. I didn't really come out that well, but he was open. And he said hello to me, and I said hello, and just said a couple of words. I said, would you like to have coffee? Would you like to come home? I'm not far away. And he said he had another date that night. But he said, why don't I give him my phone number? So I gave him my phone number, and he called the next day. And he came over. And that's how we met. I just want to tell you that Jimmy was so much in love with them, and I don't know why, but that language barrier was bad because they were talking French. but still everything was fine. And when she was here, I mean, just to give you a little idea, and I don't know if I'm pressing this too much. When my mother came here, you know, of course she doesn't know anything about American industry. So I took her to the supermarket, you know, to show her. And she was amazed that she could pick up her own stuff instead of the teller giving her. In Hungary in those days, you know, they didn't let her touch an apple or something. Half the time they give her. That's the way the communist country is. So when she saw that, I told her, I said, I have to go and do it yourself. The store was right across the street, so she couldn't get lost, even if she didn't speak English. But I told her everything that's in it. And you just need the money, just don't worry, they give you back the right check. And this went on for a week, you know, until she finally got herself by herself to go on shop. But one day, we came home from work. Jimmy actually was working very close, only a block away, in a hairdresser salon. I think he must have come home for lunch or whatever to see what she was. But she was very happy she was here. And when I came home one day, and Jimmy came home, she surprised us. She said, I have dinner. So she bought a chicken, and she made a delicious with all the vegetables and everything. The only thing was there was no chicken. But you know, our American chickens are like this. Hungary, you know, the chickens are really fat, big. It's like a turkey. So Jimmy and I were looking at each other. And I said, the soup is good, but not. It's the chicken. And she said, why? I said, well, we like to eat the chicken too. And she said, well, I saved that. She put it away, the meat, for tomorrow so she could fry the tomorrow and have another dinner. I mean, that's the way, unfortunate, every time. But of course, we made her take it out and fry it for us or cook it, and we had the whole chicken. And she was just amazed, how could we eat a whole chicken? Yeah. Well, one thing is that I met him. That's an accomplishment that he liked me enough to want me. So for me, yes. Yeah, that time I still had some. So, but that's just a joke. My other accomplishment is what I did in the retail business as a record salesman and a buyer. And I really worked myself up enough that some of these guys who were coming, the seller, we were buying, they let me buy for the department records and things. And those days, you know, the comms were very easy. Yeah. So I had not only dinners, free dinners, and take me out for 4-star places that I would never go. But we did get opera tickets, first-class opera tickets, ballet tickets, concert tickets. So, yeah, I was proud for that because I really worked very hard, but they appreciated me. Seeing that, you know, I did so much, made a lot of money. And they saw me, you know, I used to go 6 o'clock in the morning to work to set up the whole department for that particular advertisement, because those days advertisements were the greatest thing to advertise everything. Just like now, but much, much easier. Different. Anyway, that's an accomplishment. Well, my message was, you know, when I did the Ramos Holocaust survivor group, they asked the same thing at the end. And I only just sad to learn, have an education. It's very important. And love your family very much. You know, don't worry about arguments and snaps and things that we do when we are together. But just love your family and don't ever forget it, because there'll be time when you want to say I love you, give you the things that you wanted to say. That's my